one.
Hi, I'm Jenny Mays from Hobby Art, and today I've got a quick and easy card for you using Quackers, the duck with attitude. Okay, so this is the card we're going to do. I'll just put that one to one side. I'm going to use a press first of all. Let me just take that out of the way. You can obviously just do it with an acrylic block. So I'm putting my card into place and I'm using my Quackers stamp. What I should have shown you first of all is the set we're using is Quackers, and it's CS159D, designed by Sharon Bennett. And when I'm going to be using Masket in a while, and when I've finished with it, I leave it on the back of the stamp ready for the next time I use it. Okay, so I'm just putting my Quackers into place, and I'll bring it down so that you can see me inking it. I'm using VersaFine because this is waterproof when it's dry. So I'm just inking up like so. Put my VersaFine to one side, and I'll bring the press back down and just stamp my images. As I say, you can use the acrylic block, but sometimes I find the eye doesn't stamp terribly well. You know, I want it really dark, so if you are using an acrylic block, put a bit of extra ink on there and quite a firm pressure. There we are, I'm perfectly happy with that. But I'm going to put that one to one side, and I'm going to use one that is already dry because it takes a couple of minutes to dry, and I'm putting a piece of paper in there so I don't mark my my foam in my pad, because that will stay wet and mark the next card. Okay, so I'm ready for my colouring and so on. Now I use Masket sheet. This is what it's like. It's shiny on the back and this peels off and is reusable. This is an optional extra. You don't have to use it, but it does make life a lot easier. So I've stamped onto the matte side and I've cut it out, and I've cut very tightly into the black line because I want it to fit right inside the stamped image. It won't matter on this because I'm only using a cloud template, but if you were doing a strong colour round and you hadn't cut into the black line and had left any border, you'd have a white rim around your picture. But today I'm using the Hobby Art cloud stencil, and I'm using a smoothie, and I'm just holding it in place, and I'm using tumbled glass ink, distress ink, and that gives me a nice effect. If you haven't got mask over, then you need to be quite careful with this, but because the masket is there, I can be as heavy as I like. There we go. And I'm just turning the mask round each time so I get a slightly different effect. Oh, decisions, that'll do me nicely. You've got several edges to this, so it's quite a useful one to use, whether you're doing realistic or you know, stylised cards. Okay, so I'm leaving the masket in place, and this is where it comes into its place. I'm using two of the reeds from the stamp set, and this one is slightly curved. So if I didn't have the masket in place, because I can see through it, I can still be quite careful and miss the stamped image. But because I have got the masket in place, it gives me a lot more versatility. I can stamp over that, and when that is taken, when the mask is taken away, it will appear that the reeds are behind the duck. Okay, so I'm just making sure I'm not stamping over things. Don't want to cross them over. And the same the other side. I'm also going to use the bulrushes Now obviously these are flexible, so if you wanted them at an angle, you could put them at an angle. You could curve the trunk. Just have another one there. And will I get one in there? Yes, I think I will. And we'll have another one up there. Okay. Now that one, I didn't ink it properly. So I'll use my Zig Millennium pen. I'm going to move that out of the way because that's got ink on it. And I'm just going to fill that one in with a fine liner. There we are. When it's coloured you won't notice the difference. I turned it upside down purely because I didn't want to work over a wet area. So right, onto the colouring. I'm using my favourite pens, of course, Clean Colour. So they've got a number and the colour on the side. I'm going to remove the mask. Be careful when you remove it because it may still be wet, and if you get ink onto your fingers, you know the rest of the story. You can get a nice fingerprint on your card. So I'm using two colours to begin with, both greens, but the different ends of the spectrum. So a dark green, 44 deep green, and I'm using 53 yellow green. So what I'm doing, I forgot to say that this is watercolour card. Everything you need for this will come up on the screen at the beginning. So this is watercolour card because it stays wet that bit longer, makes your blending a lot easier. You can use these pens on other papers, but when you're starting, definitely the best idea is to use watercolour card because it does help your blending. Now what I'm doing is I'm working in the wet area and I'm pulling the colour down. So all the time I'm in control and I'm getting the effect that I want. I'm not going down one side, I'm going across and coming down evenly. And while that's still wet, you can see I can carry on moving that colour. So I can get exactly what effect I want, and the pen will always come back to its own colour. So this is yellow green, and you can see it's coming back to its own colour now. I'm quite happy with that. I can add more colour if I want to, but I think that's perfect for me. Right, I'm putting this to one side and I'm showing you another thing that I do very often is tip to tip. So I take the dark colour onto the light colour, so you can see that's quite that. So I've now got a mid green. The reason I'm doing it to the side and not over the card is because especially when the pens are new, or if you're a bit heavy-handed, they can splatter, and obviously you don't want speckles on your card. So I'm just putting the lids back on. Don't leave the lids off, even in between, because they are water-based and they can dry out if you leave the lids off for a long time. I'm using beige now, which is 72, just to do the bit at the bottom, and I deliberately want that rough line there. I don't want it smooth. While I've got the beige in my hand, I'm just going to colour a couple of them in like this. In fact, I'll colour that one, and with the ones that I've only coloured to one side, I'm going to pull the colour over with 71 natural beige. It was originally called flesh, so you might have either the word natural beige or flesh on your card, on your pens, I mean markers. So with the ones that I've coloured one colour, I can add another bit of colour in there like so, and again I'll just go back to my natural beige and just pull that colour over so that I get a nice effect. Okay, right, so now we're on to the red and the yellow. This is for the beak. So again, I'm putting a bit of colour on. So there's my red, and this is the yellow. So I'm just pulling the colour down, so I'm going from that strong red through oranges, working as before, small area at a time, and I'm going back each time over the colour to pour more colour down until I'm happy with it coming back to its own colour like this. Okay, so quite happy with that. I'm going to take a tiny bit of colour onto the yellow pen so that I get an orange here, a little tiny bit more, but that will go back to its own colour quite easily. Let's just pull it down a bit there. You can see it's gone back to its fine colour with no contamination. So it's a pure red, yellow again. Right, so now I'm using olive green, and I'm just going to colour some of these reeds, rushes, with the olive green. But what I can also do is I can use my yellow green and I can pull the colour down. I could of course have done the whole thing just with the original 2 pens, but it's nice to add you know, introduce another colour. So here I'm using the tip to tip technique. So I'm using the dark green and the yellow green, and I'm letting it come back to its own colour. As you can see, with the fine tip I can get into any colour at any small area that I want to. I quite like to go over the lines a little bit as well, and again a bit of colour. So I'm varying the greens all the time, and it gives me a really nice effect. Get into the fine areas, and there we go. And there we go, one quick and easy card. You have got a list of everything that you need. It will show up during the video, and I have at some point, there we are, so that's just going to go on there. Yeah, basically quite happy with that. Really fast card. Hope you've enjoyed it, and have a go.